Welcome back to another episode of Making It in Holland. My name is Gulce, rhymes with Dolce, and this is a channel designed to help you to create a life, career, and business that you absolutely love here in the Netherlands. And today we're talking all about the pensions in the Netherlands. In other words, what happens after you reach the age of retirement? What are the types of pensions available to you? How does the pension scheme work? And most importantly, I want you to think about whether this is something that you want to put yourself through, or if not, what are some alternative ways you can actually save for your retirement and therefore retire much earlier. So without further ado, let's dive in. In 2021, the retirement age is 66 years and 4 months. I know that's very specific. And in 2022, this is actually going to increase by another 4 months, and then eventually it is going to make its way to 67 years by the year 2024. So my first question for you is whether you want to be waiting until you're 67 years old to actually call yourself a retiree. Let me know down in the comments what are your thoughts on early retirement, or are you the kind of person who loves working so much that you don't mind to wait until you're 67 years old? I personally don't want to wait that long before I retire. I like to be able to enjoy life when I'm younger and be mindful of the money that I have and not really have to rely on my retirement money and wait until I'm 67 years old to receive any kind of help. This is why I made this research, to once again remind myself that to be really financially independent and live the life that I want to have, I need to be doing other things and not solely rely on my Dutch retirement, so to say. So with that said, there are 3 ways that you can actually get a pension in the Netherlands. The first one is what is known as the Dutch state pension. And this is the pension that gets built up if you're living or working in the Netherlands. And I believe it's around 2% every single year that gets put towards your retirement. The second one is the retirement pension that you get from the industry that you work in. Many of the industries have their own retirement pots. So for example, when I used to work as an architect, I was part of the Architectenfonds, which is basically the pot of money where I put my retirement money in that gets taken out from my salary. And then eventually if I reach the age 67, this is the money that I would get paid out. And last but not least, the third way that you can arrange a pension is a private pension. And this is basically consisting of your own investments. And this is not tied to the state, or it's not necessarily tied to the work that you're doing, but it's something that you actually do in addition to these pension schemes that you're already entitled to. Now, when it comes to these 3, I highly encourage you to do your own research and look into what do these pension schemes look like, especially the pension scheme for your own particular industry, because I believe every single scheme is slightly different. And this is why when I talk about the architecture one, this might not 100% apply to you. And to be honest, ever since I left the profession of architecture, I haven't really looked back at the pension that I actually built up until this now. But if I vaguely remember, after around 3 years of working, I had built up something around 500, 600 euros. So this already goes to show you that the pensions that you are building up are not necessarily going to be very high. But with that said, definitely do your own research going forward. One thing that I can talk about, however, is the Dutch state pension, because this is something that you get entitled to, especially if you've lived in the Netherlands for so long. I believe you're also entitled to this if you already have the permanent residency as well as the Dutch nationality. And what that looks like is if you're a couple, you receive 50% of your living expenses, which is based off of the minimum wage. So this is around 800 euros per person per month. And if you're a single person living by yourself, this is around 70% of the minimum wage, which is around 1,200 euros. Yes, these are not really high numbers, but remember, this is your Dutch state pension, and any other specific pension that comes on top of that adds up. And even though many people do say that the Dutch have one of the best pension schemes in the world, in this video I want to talk a little bit about how this system came to be and why it's actually benefiting the baby boomers and the older generations. And it's not really so much doing any of us youngsters born in 1960 onwards any favor, so stay tuned for that. So for example, I am working, and let's assume that I was born in 1940s and I'm an architect, therefore my pension fund is the one that's associated with the architecture pension fund. Every single month when I receive my paycheck, a part of that automatically gets invested, so to say, into this pool of pension fund that I'm building for myself, right? Actually, in the case of the Netherlands, everybody puts that specific amount of money every month from their salary into a common pool of money, which then pays out those who have reached the age of retirement. Now, essentially what that means is that your retirement money is not even really yours, and it gets spent on the person who's its turn to retire. And this was a system that was put in place in the 1950s, and it really was working quite well at the time because the ratio between the number of people working versus the number of people retiring wasn't very big. So if there were 5 people working, 1 person was retiring, therefore the amount of monthly contribution those 5 people had to pay wasn't really high because essentially only 1 person was retiring, so there was not such a big financial burden. However, what happened, especially in the 1980s and onwards, is that more and more people started to reach the age of retirement. And one of the big crises that we all talk about is the 2008 crisis. And in 2010, actually the first generation of baby boomers started to retire and retire at scale. And what that meant was the amount of money that was in this collective pool was draining, not only because more people were retiring, but because of the number of the money that was invested in the stock market actually took a negative hit, and therefore the pool itself shrunk considerably. So what does that mean for the younger people who are working and who are hoping for their own retirement? Well, I'm really sorry to break it to you, but the pool is shrinking even more because the number of people retiring is increasing at a rapid pace. And on top of that, there are not that many people in the workforce who are young that are paying for the contribution. So what that does is, A, you have a much longer retirement age because the earlier you retire, it means the faster the funds are going to run out. And of course, you don't want that. And B, basically the number of contribution the young people in the workforce are doing is increasing to really upkeep with the pace of the number of people retiring. Or you can also say to the people who have retired, sorry, we're just going to have to cut your pension. But in that case, they're also not going to be very happy with that. So how do you keep a balance to make every single party involved happy? In my opinion, neither of these scenarios is the one that makes me happy. I don't want to necessarily wait until I'm 67 to retire. I don't necessarily want old people to receive less money. And I also don't want people like me to possibly actually contribute more than they should into this pool of money. All I'm saying is that in theory, this principle worked back in the day, and this at the moment is somewhat of an outdated system. It is based in 1950s and a lot has happened since. And I sincerely believe there needs to be better ways that you take responsibility for your own financial future and your own retirement so you can actually retire at a much younger age and actually earn more than the state or your own pension fund could give you. You can definitely look at the private ways to invest your money to really get yourself a much more lucrative pension. However, with that said, in my upcoming video, I really want to talk more about different sources of income that you could start to earn at a younger age, which will hopefully accelerate your chances of retiring much faster. I also want to talk a little bit about my personal investment strategy and how I'm building for a much more stable future that will hopefully allow me to retire way earlier than 67, because I'm the kind of person who believes in living while you're alive and not necessarily wait until you're old to receive money and you don't have energy, and therefore you cannot really enjoy the life that you have right here, right now. So let me know down in the comments what kind of information would you like to hear from me regarding my own investment strategy in the Netherlands or investing in general. I will do my research, and also I will share with you what I've been doing the past year and a half, so you have an idea of what are some things that you could also possibly do for yourself. But bear in mind, I'm no financial advisor, and I'm making these videos entertain you, hopefully, and also to teach you some things, especially if you really want to move to the Netherlands and create a life, career, and business that you love. And with that said, the main takeaway of this video is that more people are retiring. There are not that many people working, and that means even if you are contributing a lot of money to this common pool of pension funds, you are not guaranteed to have a lucrative payout the moment you reach the age of retirement. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to know more about ways you can actually have money work for you and you're curious about real estate investing in the Netherlands, check out my interview with Sushin that's popping up right here on your screen, and I will see you in the next one. And of course, I also want to say, don't forget to stay awesome.